Hello everyone, welcome to Rise IAS. I am Alok Vardhan and in second session of Prelims Bites, we will discuss a very important article from today's The Hindu newspaper on retail inflation and price indices. And so why we have chosen this article? We have chosen this article mainly because conceptual clarity of a key economic concept like inflation, types of inflation and indices to measure inflation is very much important theme for preliminary exam, and UPSC in 2011 exam asked about economic growth is usually coupled with deflation, inflation, stagflation and hyperinflation. So these easy kind of question can be asked in UPSC preliminary exam. So now see article. So this article says food prices pushed up retail inflation to 3.9%. So according to recent Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation data, consumer price index rose to 3.9%, which is highest in 16 months. So this this article is very much important for prelims section. Please read this article. We have highlighted important parts for prelims perspective. Now we'll see context of this article. So retail inflation, CPI-based retail inflation rose to 3.9%, a 16-month high driven mainly by higher food prices, especially in cereals. It remained close to RBI inflation target of 4%. As you all know, the retail inflation target of 4% plus minus 2%. So maximum tolerable limit is 6%, minimum tolerable limit is 2%. So this is inflation window. Now we'll see some core concept of inflation. So inflation is of what is the definition of inflation? Inflation can be defined as sustained rise in general price and reducing purchasing power. So another such important concept is deflation. So what is definition of deflation? Deflation is general fall in prices and increasing purchasing power. So due to inflation, purchasing power increases. And third concept is core inflation. Core inflation is when inflation excluding volatile food, fuel and electricity prices is called core inflation. Now we see type of inflation. So type of inflation by rate. So first type of inflation is called creepy inflation. This is when inflation is 3%, near about 3% annually is called creeping inflation. This kind of inflation is very much important for economic development. So 3% or 3 near about 3% inflation is considered as healthy. Considered as very healthy for economic perspective. Now we see second kind of inflation is walking inflation. Walking inflation is when inflation rate is between 3 to 10%. This kind of inflation is called walking inflation. Now third type of inflation is called galloping inflation. When inflation rate is about 10 to 50% annually, this kind of inflation is called galloping inflation. Now the last one is hyperinflation. When inflation is about 50% or above per month, this is called hyperinflation. This kind of inflation is very deadly for any economy. Now we see type of inflation by cause. So first one is demand pull inflation. When demand excess demand over supply. When supply is limited but demand is huge, this kind of demand is called demand pull inflation. Now second type of inflation is called cost push inflation. When rising production cost raise prices. So price of the final goods increases mainly due to increase in production cost. This kind of inflation is called cost push inflation. Third type of inflation is called built-in inflation, when wage price spiral due to inflation expectation. So we'll see someone decided to defer purchasing, or some company want to defer production. This kind of inflation is called built-in inflation. Now next inflation is a structural inflation caused by supply bottleneck and economic rigidity. So structural inflation is caused by supply bottleneck and economic rigidity. Now we'll see some key inflation measure indices. So first index is consumer price index. What this consumer price index measures retail price of goods and services. And what is the key feature of this consumer price index? It is published by Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and this CPI includes services. So this kind of fact is very important for upcoming preliminary examination. Now second index is wholesale price index. Wholesale price index measure wholesale price of goods. So wholesale price index measure goods price of goods at the wholesale price level. And who publishes it? It's published by DPIIT, Department of Promotion of Internal Trade. And this kind of wholesale price index excludes services. Now third one is producers price index. And what this producers price index measures? This measures producers level price changes, and this reflect input cost changes. How input change price changes reflect in final commodity. Now next one is GDP deflator. So GDP deflator measures price of all domestically produced goods and services, and it is the most comprehensive inflation measure. So GDP deflator is the most important or comprehensive inflation measure instrument. Now next is inflation targeting. So RBI through Monetary Policy Committee target 4% inflation with a tolerance band of 2 to 6%. So minimum tolerance band is 2% and maximum tolerance band is 6%. So 4% plus minus 2%. So next is monetary tools. So RBI through repo rate changes, open market operation and credit control tries to control inflation. Now what government can do to control inflation? So government measures is fiscal restraint, means so and reducing expenditure and fiscal prudence, and release of buffer stock, export restriction, subsidy on essential commodity. Through this, government can control inflation. Now see important concept about inflation targeting. So thank you for attending this session, and you can download complete PDF from our website and YouTube channel. Thank you. Thank you.